Chef Ben, and this is Dinner with Ben, brought to you by Ashworks Cutting Boards and T North Carbonated Iced Tea. And today we are making one of my favorites, New York strip steak with buttermilk smashed potatoes and glazed carrots, and we're going to finish it off with coconut macaroons. I'm super excited for this. I love steak. Striploin isn't always my favorite cut, but we're going to do it up really nice today. And we'll just give it a few minutes. Hello Steve, hello Deanna, hello Wendy, thanks for coming. We'll just give it a few minutes for people to kick in, and then we will jump into it. Okay, so if there's any questions before we get started or anything like that, please feel free to ask. If you haven't rounded up your ingredients or anything yet, do that now. And then we'll start in about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay? Awesome. Hello, hello, hello. I'm going to adjust my camera really quickly. Hope that wasn't too bad. No barbecue, we're doing it in a pan. So I'm going to use a cast iron pan. If you don't have a cast iron pan, that's okay. But you want like a heavy bottom pan at the very least. Like a really nice cast iron pan would be fine. Hello Kat, thanks for joining us. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, so first things first, let's turn the oven on. It isn't a million degrees in here today, which is good. It's been super hot lately, but the temperature's gone down a bit. So we're going to turn the oven on to 350, okay? So that's going to be for the macaroons. So the first thing we're going to do, obviously get the oven on for the macaroons. Again, that was 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then we're going to start cooking our potatoes. We'll make our macaroons, get those in the oven, and then we'll make the rest of the meal. This should be a fairly quick one tonight. Maybe. We'll see. Who knows? So the potatoes I have here are baby red potatoes. They're just, regular little potatoes. We're going to leave them whole. We're going to boil them. And what we're going to do is leave the skin on and everything, and then we're going to drain them. We're going to heat up the butter and some buttermilk, and then we're going to smash the potatoes into it. We're not going to mash them up too much. We just want to break them up a bit and get some nice texture to it, and keep the skin for fiber. Now, when I made this menu, I, for some reason, thought that you could buy 500 milliliter and 250 milliliter things of buttermilk. But what I discovered today is that you can only buy 1 liter things of buttermilk, or at least that's all I could find. So I apologize for that, because I'm assuming you guys all have, or some of you have buttermilk left over and you're not sure what to do with it. After this, if you go to my Instagram page, at Chef Ben Kelly, or somewhere down on my Facebook page, you should be able to find a recipe for buttermilk ranch dressing. I think it'll be a picture of bright red chicken wings with white sauce dripped over. It'll be there. And the buttermilk would be really good in that, or you can marinate chicken in it for fried chicken, anything like that, or tea biscuits, whatever you want. So, oven's on. Let's get the potatoes in. All I'm going to do, dump them in this pot. I'm just going to give them a rinse with cold water. Dump that water out, and then add hot water. We'll season with some salt, and then we'll boil them and cook them up. Okay? You want to make sure there's quite a bit of water in here. You want to cover the potatoes by at least 1 inch, because they're going to take a while to cook. And as they cook, the water is going to evaporate. You don't really want the potatoes sticking out of the water. And if you add more water, it's going to drop the temperature. And it's going to stop boiling, and it's going to mess up the cooking times. So we want to make sure that we cover the potatoes by at least 1 inch of water. Okay, and we're going to add a nice big pinch of salt. And now, just going to turn that on high, and then we'll let it go. Okay. Next step. We're going to make, my shoe's untied, we're going to make the macaroons. So, these are going to be really, really easy. What we're going to do first is take 2 eggs, We're going to separate the yolks and the whites. Okay? So usually, or often when people do this, is they'll crack the egg and then they'll pass the yolk back and forth and let the white fall. The problem with doing that is that the shell is really sharp and the chance of breaking the yolk are very high. And because we're whipping this, we're not really going to make a full meringue, but we're going to whip it like a meringue. And if we have any yolk in there, it's not going to rise properly because the fat in the yolk will actually prevent that from happening. So we want to be very careful not to get any yolk in here. So the trick that I always recommend is just break the egg into your bowl, and then all I'm going to do is reach in and just pull the yolk up, just like that. The yolk is a lot stronger than people think as long as nothing sharp hits it. Right? So there's a membrane on there that's kind of protecting it, and as long as nothing sharp punctures it, it's fine. So I just pulled the yolk out, and then I have the white in the bowl. I'm going to do that with the other egg as well. And I just find this a lot easier than passing the egg back and forth. See, and then just like that, it's all separate. And yeah, it's kind of gooey on your hands, but that's fine. Okay, next step, we're going to add into here a 1/4 cup of sugar, a pinch of salt, and half a teaspoon each of vanilla extract and almond extract. Okay, so I'm just going to use my teaspoons here. So a teaspoon is, does anybody know how many tablespoons makes up a 1/4 cup without Googling it? So you guys are talking about the... Yeah, so you guys... I think that some people are talking about the water bottle trick for getting the egg yolk out, where you take like a pop bottle or whatever, you squeeze it, put it over the egg, and then it sucks it up. You can do that too, but I very rarely have pop bottles around. Does anybody... Yeah, good one, Wendy. So it's 4. That's very true. So we're going to go 4 tablespoons of sugar, or a 1/4 cup. And I'm not leveling them off. It doesn't really matter that much. Okay. So I have my sugar in here. I'm going to measure out a half teaspoon of vanilla extract and a half teaspoon of almond extract. Okay, just like that. Get rid of these. Now we're just going to mix this up. We're going to pinch of salt first. Just a nice small pinch of salt, and now we're just going to mix this up. Get everything incorporated, and then we'll beat it a little more because we want to get some air into it. So right now, it smells delicious. All it really smells is the almond, but it just kind of looks like snot, if I'm being honest. But that's okay. We're just going to mix it up. And once you get everything fully incorporated and it starts to foam a little, you can mix it a little faster. And now, again, I know we've been over this, but don't move your whole arm. You don't need to get that motion. Just kind of back and forth with the wrist. And the idea here is that you want to move all of the egg whites at once. You want the whole portion of egg whites to be moving simultaneously. Okay, and we're going to do this for about 3 minutes. So switch arms if you can, or if you have a helper, get them to help you. And you can see it's getting kind of nice and thick, but we want it to be pretty almost white. So we're just going to keep beating it. And again, do this with as little movement as possible. Because the more movement you put in, the more tired you're going to get, the more fatiguing it's going to be on your arm. Oh, thank you. Wendy said that my fries and chicken looked good. Thank you very much. They were delicious. That was a post from a few days ago. So we mix, we mix, we mix. So it's starting to look a little more together. But we're kind of going to keep going for a minute or two. And again, the idea, we're trying to get as much air in here as possible. So the more we can keep everything moving simultaneously, the more air we're going to be able to get in quicker, right? So use the structure of the bowl. A lot of people, for whatever reason, end up holding the bowl way up here. And then you're kind of fighting in multiple directions. Keep the bowl on the counter or the board. You can tilt it, but don't lift it up. And then use the structure of the bowl, the curve of the bowl, to help you move all of the whites. And if you make a mess, it's okay. Almost. We're almost. You could do this with an electric mixer, but I'm sure a lot of you know my philosophy of if you do it by hand, then you're burning off the calories you're going to eat. Wendy says she always holds the bowl down by her thighs because she's short. That's it. It's easier to have it braced against something in the bowl. There it is. Okay, beautiful. So I made a mess, but you can kind of see the color and the texture and the consistency that we're looking for. Almost like melted marshmallow fluff. Now the next step is 2 cups of sweetened coconut. Okay, so I have 2 cups here. I'm just going to put this all in here. And we're just going to mix this up. Just like this. Hello Trina, thanks for joining us. Nice to see you. Okay, so we have everything in here. Now we just have to spoon the mixture out onto a baking sheet. Mine's lined with parchment paper. And then we'll bake it. So, I'm just going to take a couple spoons. And just one nice big spoonful there. And then we'll go back and tighten them up with our hands once we get these all divvied up and leave some space in between them. I guess I only need 1 spoon. And these are a really delicious dessert, especially for gluten-free people like me, because obviously there's no gluten in here. And when they're done, we're not going to do it today, but when they're done, you can dip them in chocolate or whatever you want. I'm going to make mine kind of big. Yes, that's too big. You could also drizzle chocolate over them if you wanted to. Anything like that would be delicious because chocolate makes almost everything better. Oh, so I'm just going to go back over these and just kind of tighten them up with my hands. Get them nice and bunched together. Okay. Now I'm going to pop these in the oven, which is at 350. I'm going to bake them for 20 to 25 minutes. So we'll start it at 20, then we'll check them. Hello, Patrick. So we'll check them after 20 minutes, and we'll see how they're doing. We just want them to be a nice golden brown. So, 20-minute timer, good to go. Next step, carrots. So, I'm going to take a drink of water first. Okay, so carrots, we're going to peel them. Cut the ends off first. I have my trusty speed peeler here. And for anybody who's cooking along, if you need me to slow down or anything like that, just let me know. So these carrots, we're going to do a glaze on them. If anybody's ever heard of carrots vichy, this is essentially what we're doing, except we're not putting tarragon in them, which is kind of the classic preparation. So what we're going to do is cut them in kind of a different way than we normally would. And then we're going to cook them with a little bit of vinegar and sugar and butter and just enough water to cover them. And as that cooks, that liquid's going to reduce down. By the time that's reduced, the carrots will be cooked, and that'll actually be a glaze for the carrots. It's going to be real good. So I have my carrots peeled, and what we're going to do is we're going to do something called... Deanna said she's just watching tonight because she's eating leftover Chinese. I don't blame you at all. I wish I had leftover Chinese. Okay, so we're going to do what's called a roll cut or an oblong cut. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to have my knife on an angle, probably 30 degrees. I'm going to make a cut. I'm going to do a quarter turn forward of the carrot, and then I'm going to cut again. And so this is the shape that I'm going to be left with, an oblong shape. So I'm going to do that with the whole carrot. We don't want to cut them too big because we want them to cook. This is a better example, I think, kind of what we're going for here. Hopefully you can see that. And so when you roll, you want the sharp part at the top when you cut. And you'll cut on your angle, you'll roll to the sharp until the sharp part of the carrot is on the top, and then you'll roll. This cut works really well for like carrots in a stew or something like that, and it's great for this application. So we'll do the other one, and you can do this much faster. I'm just kind of going slow so you guys kind of know what I'm doing. And again, it's just roll, roll, cut, roll, cut, roll, cut. Quarter turn, cut, quarter turn, cut. And then this is what we're left with. And so as these cook, those sharp edges are going to kind of soften, but there will be a touch of a crunch in the middle. So you get this varied texture with the carrots, which is going to be really nice. You'll get a little bit of everything. Okay? I'm going to take a pot. I'm going to put the carrots in here. I'm going to put in about a tablespoon of honey. I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of butter. Nice big pinch of salt, pepper, 2 tablespoons of cider vinegar. And I'm going to put 1 sprig of thyme in here. Now, my carrots only come up to about here. It's just like 1 layer on the bottom of the pot. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's just 1 layer on the bottom of the pot. And all I'm going to do is put just enough water to cover them. I don't want any more than that. Okay? So, Wendy said she would say she had rappy pie, but unless you're from Nova Scotia, I doubt you know what it is. So, I know what rappy pie is. I'm from Nova Scotia, and that's where I am right now. That's where I was born. But I've actually never had rappy pie because my mom hated it. And so it was just never anything that I tried. So people ask me all the time about rappy pie, and like I can kind of talk about it theoretically, and I know what it is, but yeah, I've never had it. I'm kind of surprised, actually. I should probably remedy that. I know. I will, I'll try it. If you have a good recipe, send it to me and I'll make it. Okay, potatoes are boiling away. They're not going to take very long because they are just baby potatoes. So I'm going to get the carrots on. I'm going to put them on high because we want all of the liquid to reduce down into the glaze. So it's going to take a little while. I will try them, I promise. So I'm just going to turn them on high and let that go. And I'm going to turn my pan on to medium. So this is a cast iron pan. I'm not going to put any oil in it. It's a cast iron, so it's obviously got some oil in it. But I'm not going to put any additional oil in it. That's all going to come from the steak. Now, I have these beautiful ribeyes, or sorry, these beautiful strip loins that I got from a local butcher today. And they've been out of the fridge for almost an hour. So the idea is that with steak, you want it to come to room temperature before you cook it. The reason being that if the internal temperature of the steak is 3 or 4 degrees, which is what the temperature of your fridge is, it's going to take you longer to heat up the interior. And by the time the interior of the steak is hot, the exterior will be so hot that it'll carry over cooking the middle. So let's say you want a medium steak. Okay? If it's coming directly out of the fridge and into the pan, by the time the middle equals medium, the exterior of the steak is going to be at such a high heat that when you take the steak off, it's going to continue to cook it, which we don't want. So if the steak is at room temperature, which is 20 degrees, probably 22 degrees, or actually probably hotter right now, it's going to take less time to heat the steak through. So therefore, there's going to be less residual heat on the steak when we take it out of the pan, and much less opportunity for carryover cooking. Okay? So one way to combat this is we can undercook it just a touch, like just a touch. So if you want a medium, you would cook it between mid-rare and medium, just on that line, and then it'll carry over to it. But really, these steaks are thin enough that that's not going to be that big of an issue. But if we took them directly out of the fridge, that would be a problem. So that's why you let steaks come to room temperature before you cook them. Okay? Hello, Robert. Hello, Marcelly. Thanks for joining us. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to pack them dry. Now, generally with steaks, I recommend that when you buy them, you take them out of the package and you put them on a stainless steel rack or on something that they can breathe on both sides, and you let them dry out in your fridge at least overnight. The reason being that when the surface is dry, you get a nice sear on the steak. If it's damp or wet, it's not going to sear properly because when the water hits it, it's actually going to steam and it's just going to turn gray. So we want to dry this off as much as possible, and if you can let it sit in your fridge uncovered overnight, that's when you're going to get the best color on it. And same with the chicken. If you have a whole chicken, take it out of the wrapping, let it sit in your fridge overnight, let the skin dry out, and that's how you'll get that really golden brown skin, because there's no moisture, it's all dehydrated. Okay? Same with, if you've ever seen pitmasters in the States, when they smoke chicken legs and they take it and the skin stays on the leg when they bite into it, as opposed to when you cook a chicken leg and you bite into it and the skin rips off. The reason being that they actually let the skin dry, so it kind of clings to the meat of the leg instead of just ripping off. That's it. Okay, so we're going to dry this guy off on both sides. Get rid of that. And now, ideally, I like my steak mid-rare. But you can cook it however you want. And if you watched, I don't know what episode it was. It might have been the chicken legs episode, which might have been like 1 or 2. I talked about the kind of palm thing. So I'll get into that in a second. Hello, Brian. So the idea here is that with strip loins, and this works perfectly with strip loins, we have what's called the pinch test. I don't know if it's actually called that. I made up the name, but it works. So the idea is that if you just, you don't have to squeeze, but if you gently put these two fingers together and you push right here, that's about a rare steak. Okay? And then if you put these two fingers together and you push right here, that's about a medium rare steak, specifically strip loins. And then you have medium well, and then you have well. Okay? And if you open it up, that's kind of like a blue rare. So when you're cooking your steak, we're going to sear it on one side. We'll season it first. We'll sear it for about 3 minutes, and we'll flip it, and we'll cook it for about another 3 minutes. And we'll take it off the heat, let it sit for a second, and we'll check it. If we check it right on the heat, we're not going to get an accurate read on it. So we'll check it by pushing it. And so if you want a medium steak, put your thumb and your index finger or your middle finger together and just poke right here, and that's the texture, that's the firmness that you're looking for. And you're not squeezing them together, you're just gently pushing them together. And that's the firmness you're looking for on your steak. So my pan's nice and hot. I'm going to season generously with salt and pepper. Oftentimes I will put garlic powder, onion powder, and Old Bay seasoning on my steaks, but I'm not going to do that today. We're just going to go nice and simple. And again, I don't have any oil in my pan. I'm not putting any additional oil. If you're using stainless steel, put a little bit of canola oil or like vegetable oil or something like that. But if you're using cast iron, don't put any additional oil in it. So I'm just going to pat the seasoning into the steaks here, and then I'm just going to carefully lay them in. And you want to hear that sear. You want to make sure your pan's nice and hot. And kind of pat them down, make sure that the whole under surface is in contact with the pan. Donna asked if I said my pan should be at 3. No, I have it at about medium. Okay, so while the steaks are doing their thing, I'm just going to season the other side. Garlic. So I'm going to take just 2 cloves. I'm going to leave, I'm going to throw it. I'm going to leave that root on. I know I usually take it off. I'm going to leave it on. I'm just going to crush. I'm just going to peel. Set that aside. And then once we flip the steaks, we're going to add some butter, and we'll add the garlic and a bunch of thyme. Okay? Carrots look delicious. They smell delicious. Everything's good. I told you this was going to be a quick episode. We're almost done. Get out our trusty tongs. If you don't have a set of tongs at home, you should really get one. They're a very, very handy tool. I highly recommend it. So, with strip loins, they have the fat cap on the back, right? You know what I mean? Like right down here, that piece of fat there. And we want to cook that. So what we're going to do is before we flip them entirely, we're actually going to stand it up and just kind of sear that fat, just to make sure we're actually getting it a little bit cooked. Okay? We've got about 2 minutes, so I'm going to wait about another 45 seconds, and then I'll stand them up. We'll sear that fat cap, and then we'll flip them over. We'll add our butter and garlic and thyme to the pan. And get a spoon handy, because we're going to do what's called basting, which you've probably heard in relation to a turkey, but we're going to do it with a steak. Have you ever seen like TV chefs? They'll hold the pan and they'll throw the butter on the steak. That's what we're going to do. And the reason being, the thyme and the garlic are going to flavor the butter, and the butter, as we spoon it over the steak, is going to A, create a nice crust on the steak, and B, it's going to get in all the nooks and crannies on the surface, and it's going to get down into the steak and flavor it. Okay? So, I'm going to stand them up, and you can see that beautiful crust we got there. I'm going to stand them up, and we're just going to let those cook for about 40 seconds. Okay, steak down. You can see, I don't know if you can see, but it's nice and golden there. So we'll flip these. And now we're going to add quite a bit of butter. We're going to add about a quarter cup. And we're going to add our garlic and all of the thyme. And again, just kind of push your steak down, make sure the whole surface is in contact with the pan. And now I'm going to tilt my pan and I'm going to spoon the butter over. Okay, and now we're just going to let that sit for a minute. And in the meantime, I'm going to check my potatoes, which I feel like aren't done yet. Oh, they're almost done. Perfect. So we'll spoon some more. And make sure you're getting like the entire surface of the steak. The other thing to remember is that you don't want to leave your pan up for too long, because as it's coming up, you're taking it off the heat, and you're kind of killing the temperature, right? So you make sure you're balancing, tilting, and leaving it down on the surface of the burner. Okay? So if you're wondering, this is kind of what it looks like right now, which is beautiful. Now really quickly, I'm going to pop this out of here. I'm going to let it sit for about 40 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay, so I can tell already that this one isn't quite done, and that one, which is a little smaller, is. So I'm going to take this out. Yeah. And I'm just going to set this aside. So again, you have rare, medium, so sorry, rare, medium, medium well, and well. So open is, Donna said her steaks were cold, so they're not searing very well. Sorry, I should have mentioned that in the beginning, that's my fault. Were they wet too, Donna, or were they just cold? Okay, that guy's done. So I'm just going to take this off the heat. We're going to kill that burner. We're going to kill that burner. My potatoes are hot and done. I'm just going to set these aside and let them rest. Carrots are looking good. I'm going to drain the potatoes. It's just cold and they're not searing. You're using a cast iron pan, or are you using stainless steel? Was the pan hot, or I don't know. I don't know, because cold steaks shouldn't really change how they sear. It'll just change how they cook through. So maybe the pan wasn't hot enough. That's possible. Just going to drain my potatoes really quickly. I'm going to add some butter to the pan, just about 2 tablespoons, or actually about a tablespoon. And I'm going to add about a cup of buttermilk. And we're just going to pop it on the burner. The burner's still hot. I'm not going to turn it on. And we'll let that heat up a bit till the butter's melted. And we're going to add some salt and pepper. And my macaroons just dinged, so I'm going to take a look at them. I'm going to let them go for 3 more minutes. And I'll show you what they look like real quickly. So this is what my macaroons look like, but I'm actually going to let them go about 3 more minutes because they're still looking a little juicy, so I'm going to let them go. Okay, my butter's melted, my buttermilk is above room temperature, it's warm enough to melt the butter, so that's good. I'm going to add my potatoes back in here. I'm going to grab a masher, but again, I don't want to mash these up too much, I just want to break them up. That's it. Okay. Now, I'm going to grab a spoon and just give them a stir. And you're going to notice the buttermilk kind of makes them look a little bit gross, but they're going to be delicious. And you can kind of see, hopefully you can kind of see that. And we'll give them a taste. They'll probably need a little bit more salt and pepper. No, they're good. Perfect. Yeah, maybe a touch for salt. Okay, so those aside. Carrots. You can see that glaze in there, hopefully. And those are good to go. So I'm going to take those off the heat. And now I'm going to plate up one steak. My wife isn't home yet. One of these steaks is for her, so I'm not going to plate it, but I will plate mine. So actually, before I plate this, let's talk about resting steaks first. So I'm assuming most of you probably know why you rest steaks, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Obviously, when you heat things, the steak starts to, the molecules in the steak vibrate. That's what causes the heat, and it causes the moisture and the liquid and the fats and everything that melts in the steak to also go crazy. So we let it rest so that everything can calm down. The liquid and the melted fats can be evenly distributed throughout the meat. So that way, when we cut into it, the juice stays in the meat as opposed to going all over the plate, and that way we can actually enjoy the steak and it doesn't dry out. So same like if you have like a rare steak and you cut into it, it should not bleed out on your plate. If it's bleeding out on your plate, it means that it wasn't rested long enough. The other thing with that could be that it wasn't brought to room temperature first, but more than likely it's that it just wasn't rested long enough. Any steak that is cooked properly and rested properly will not bleed out on your plate. There will be a little bit of juice that comes out of it. That's going to happen, but it's not going to just like, it's not going to be like gushing out on your plate. Like if you just take a steak off the grill, put it on your plate and cut it. So that's why we let it rest. And you want to let it rest. So we cook these for 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes on each side. So we want to let them rest for about 6 minutes. Really, that's about it. So I'm just going to grab these out of the oven and then we'll take care of those guys. Oh, those look delicious. There we go, gluten-free coconut macaroons, which are way too hot to do anything with right now. And here we go. So the reason why we use the buttermilk in these potatoes is because the buttermilk is a really tart, fresh flavor, and it just gives like this really unique flavor to the potatoes. And we leave the skin on in nice big chunks of potato, just for texture, a little bit of color, fiber. It all helps, right? And now we have these beautiful, beautiful carrots with this gorgeous glaze. Look at that. So there's not much in there, right? You could cook that liquid down, and it smells amazing. It's going to be a little acidic from the vinegar. It's going to be a little bit sweet from the honey, a little bit of earthiness from the thyme. It's going to be gorgeous. Spoon these over here. Perfect. Set this aside. I'm going to take my steak. There's this beautiful sear on it. And I'm going to cut it. You don't have to cut it. I'm going to. And it is a beautiful, kind of rare to medium rare, which is exactly what I was looking for on this guy. My wife prefers hers a little more done, so that's why I left hers in a little longer. And now, the final thing is I'm just going to take a little bit of this garlicky, thymy butter that we had. I'm going to mash the garlic up that's in here. Mix that into the butter. And I'm not going to put too much on here. I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of this over my steak. And if you want to get really fancy, you can take a little bit of the thyme for garnish. Okay? So here we have a beautiful New York Striploin, the buttermilk smashed potatoes, and glazed carrots. Right? Nice. And then, obviously, our macaroons, which need to set. They need to cool for at least 15 minutes before we can touch them. But You can kind of see it's beautiful. I'm actually really excited to eat these. I'm just going to break it if I try and pick it up. So that's it, guys. That was the quickest episode. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. So I guess Steve and Donna's pan wasn't hot enough. No. So what I would recommend is probably popping it in the oven if it's still hot from the macaroons, and just kind of finishing it in there. Because if you put it back in the pan, it's probably just going to mess it up. So I would just throw that in the oven for probably 10 minutes or something like that. 5 to 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions before we go? Again, this is like the quickest episode of Dinner with Ben we've had. I'm really excited to eat this. These carrots. They're so good. And again, they still have a little bit of crunch, but then they have that kind of soft exterior. They're delicious. So guys, thank you for watching. I'm Chef Ben. This is Dinner with Ben, brought to you by Ashworks Cutting Boards or ashworks.ca and T North Carbonated Iced Tea. Thank you so much for watching. Next week's episode, the menu will be out on Wednesday, as always. So take a look for that. So I don't know if you've noticed, I've been doing events instead of just releasing the menu. The reason being that it kind of, if you sign up for the event, if you say that you're going, it'll notify you that the show's on, which just makes it easier. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back next week with another episode of Dinner with Ben. Tell your friends about it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for everything. I'll see you next week.